Hey guys, what's going on? John here from What's Spinning, here tonight to chat about this new Killers album, Imploding The Mirage. The Killers, legendary Las Vegas alternative rockers, and one of my favorite live acts of all time. Seriously, if you've never seen these guys live, definitely go out of your way to do so. There's always been something about the Killers that I just can't say no to. I don't think their debut album, Hot Fuss, gets as much credit as it should. Yes, it has legendary singles like Somebody Told Me and Mr. Brightside, but it also has a slew of darker post-punk tracks here that really hit just as hard. Let's be real, ever since, the Killers have kind of been all over the place. Their follow-up, Sam's Town, has a lot to like on it. There's some really great tracks, but it was also much more inconsistent compared to their debut. I personally wasn't into the sunny vibes and new wave elements on Day and Age, that's just me. And Battleborn was so huge in sound that I was very, very underwhelmed when I realized there was no heart to any of it. Now, I will say this though, the Killers, time and time again, maybe I've lessened on them over the years, they always reel me back with big singles, great singles. While I've never been a fan at all of Day and Age or Battleborn, if you put on Human or one of my all-time favorites, Runaways, I'm getting into it. Now, their last album, Wonderful Wonderful, while I had consistency issues once again, I thought they were putting out some of their best stuff in years, like The Man and Run for Cover. Now, leading up to this album, it's been tough for me. I really want to love another Killers album, and I've been cautiously optimistic because I've loved these singles. Let's chat about this thing. This album starts off with My Own Soul's Warning, and as far as a mission statement goes, it doesn't get much bigger than this. This is a vast cinematic track for the ages, and you know what? The Killers have done plenty of those over the years, but this sounds pretty larger than life. It reminds me of the kind of track that would show up and maybe give me a little bit of false hope on like Battleborn. It has that Heartland rock Americana feel at its core. Man, this track just overall is freaking great. It's over the top and so heartfelt, and the performances all around are just knockouts. This plays to all the Killers' strengths really well. There's a strong message, the verses are indestructible, and this chorus is absolutely huge. I mean, what a wake-up call. What a great start to this album. I've loved this track for months now. Now, spoiler alert, this is a very synth-heavy album, and if you told me that 10 years ago, I really would have headed for the hills, but I think they do really well with it here. As a matter of fact, for most of this album, the Killers kind of sound larger than life. Blowback, while not as throttling and intense as its album's opener, is still very telling, very timely, and shows the Killers once again on top form. I really think they're onto something. They seem to be very timely, very current, but at the same time are full of life and writing really catchy hooks. And for me, I honestly think Dying Breed is the best track here. I'll go out and say it. I think this is one of the best tracks the Killers have wrote in probably 10 years. Talk about larger than life. This track is an anthem. It progresses wonderfully. It is so freaking catchy. This takes me back to times where I heard some of their initial singles and I said to myself, wow, I could see this band really lasting a long time and having a really great career. But now I feel like they're finally filling these ridiculously large shoes they keep making for themselves. Caution, featuring Lindsey Buckingham of Fleetwood Mac, honestly took a little while to grow on me, but it certainly has, quite a bit too. It's upbeat, almost has some new wave flair to it. Once again, these are things that they've worked with in the past, but not nearly as concrete as this. Not to mention, in this sea of tracks that are synth heavy, this track just fits right at home. And talk about right at home, Lindsey Buckingham's playing in his solo here just hits the spot. Now, I will say this, there are a few tracks here that disappoint me a little bit. For one, we have My God featuring Wise Blood. This is a tough one for me. Not only is it the first track that really didn't hit me that hard, but I was looking so much forward to this track. I really love Wise Blood, especially what she's been doing lately. And you know what? Her contributions on this track are great, and the hook, once again, is gargantuan. My only issue is the verses here don't add up, honestly. Like, overall, as a whole track, this doesn't come close to the anthems that fill up the rest of this album. And When the Dreams Run Dry is by far my least favorite track here. It's one of the sappier tunes here, which I don't really mind, but it just comes off so whiny compared to the rest of the tracks, and preachy, which, you know what, for most of this album they stuck away from. This easily could have been a very preachy album. I'm really glad that it's not, honestly, because to be honest, I'm loving this. As far as a deep cut goes, Lightning Fields featuring K.D. Lang might be my favorite track here. I will say this, a little spoiler alert for you guys, this is a very 80s sized album. There's a lot of arena rock going on on here. But I think the Killers know that, and they completely own it. It's these very visually striking and intense tracks that really back that up. Once again, this brings me back to a simpler time. Hearing a track like this 10 years ago would have made me think, wow, these guys make these huge shoes for themselves, but they can't fill it. But here, they really prove me wrong. They sound like a band that could last still. This chorus is just so full of life. And while it's completely over the top, honestly, it's just what the doctor ordered. Fire and Bone, on the other hand, has a little funk influence in it. It's a little bit more on the low-key side, but it still packs a punch. In parts, it almost reminds me of, like, the man from Wonderful Wonderful. And I will say this, it has lessened on me just a little, mostly because it doesn't really hit nearly as hard as these arena-sized anthems, but still, it's a very good track. Running Towards a Place continues to blend Americana and new wave and heavy synths and arena-sized balladry. It's these things that really you wouldn't expect to work together, but the Killers kind of own it. I mean, if you're not into larger-than-life ballads and very cinematic performances and very visually striking tunes, this isn't going to be an album for you. You could say that the Killers are trying too hard, that they're maybe being a little bit too preachy, but I think that they've really come into their own and really gotten their own little unique niche here right now. And while this album's finale, Imploding the Mirage, did worry me from a distance, I think it's a great finale. It's just as over the top. It's almost ridiculously over the top in parts. What more do you want me to say at this point? It's what most of this album has been. But it's just as powerful, just as well written, just as catchy. It's so good. Is this album cheesy? Yes. Is it filled with arena-sized ballads that probably shouldn't work? Absolutely. But the Killers own almost every track here. It is incredibly catchy and incredibly easy to get caught up in. If you've enjoyed the Killers in the past, I think this is probably one of the best albums they've done in quite some time, and I'm happy to say that. I'm feeling a decent 8 on this album, but let me know what you guys think down below. If you liked the video, be sure to give us a like, give us a subscribe, and let me know down below what you would like for me to chat about in the future. And until next time, have a great day, guys.